Hey, Bulls and Bears, we have some major news on the sound money precious metals front. And this is a major central bank announcing that there's going to be a new gold standard. Now, according to a source we have right here, and this was a recent interview. I'm trying to pronounce his name here. Maybe I won't get it right. Maybe I will. Ert Hoban, and he is the director of financial markets for the Dutch Central Bank. And this came out in a few different publications, a few different financial news outlets here. But this one here is out of Gainesville Coins. Dutch Central Bank admits it has prepared for a new gold standard, folks. Before we get into the article, let's talk about how huge this is, right? I've been criticized here by other YouTubers, I won't say any names, and they didn't actually come out and say my name, but they did say anyone that said that precious metals is going to be back integrated in the monetary system or the financial system, they're crazy, conspiracy theory, it never happened. Folks, why do you think precious metals are being stacked? Central banks are accumulating precious metals, and we'll talk about the amounts, but we broke a record that was originally set back in 1965, just here recently. We're going to show you that chart here later in this video on what central banks are doing. It's pretty mind-blowing. So question, if paper money or even digital money were the future of the monetary system, why would central banks be accumulating hard assets or precious metals, especially gold or silver? Why would that be happening? Wouldn't they just be stacking pallets of paper money? Or wouldn't they be just having hard drives full of digital money, ones and zeros, right? That's not real money. This is real money, precious metals. So let's go ahead and get into this article, folks. This is, I think, pretty huge news here. Dutch Central Bank admits it is prepared for a new gold standard here. And out of this interview, the director here of the central bank answers some pretty key questions on where he thinks the monetary system is headed. Hoban says 612 tons of gold. That's our total holdings. It's worth about 35 billion euros at the moment. And we have diversified it around the world as a good investor should. We've spread it over 4 locations. Here's key right here. About 30% in the Netherlands. If I can talk here. 30% in New York at the Federal Reserve. Over 20% in Canada and 18% in London. He continues, gold goes way back. At the end of the 19th century, the Dutch central bank started accumulating gold, which was important to establish confidence in our currency. He continues, as a result of the surplus, our gold reserves increased, or we got more dollars than we converted into gold. We kept asking the Americans, can you convert our dollars into gold? We became owners of gold. That was at the Federal Reserve in New York, and it's still there. Listen to this. Americans made losses from their trade relationships. Eventually, it was unsustainable for them to lose more and more gold reserves. In 1971, the president back then, which was Nixon, announced America's departure from Bretton Woods and the gold standard. But by then, we had over 1,700 tons of gold. Yes, we did very well then. All right, again, folks, this is huge because now we have central bank, at least one central bank out there talking about it or admitting it. But don't just listen to what they say. Look at what they're doing. All the different central banks accumulating hard assets, right? Just connect the dots, 1 plus 1. Why do you think the prices went up so much, right? It's being accumulated in large quantities by central banks. All right, so we know where the future's headed. The question is, how long does it take to get there? It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And why do you think at the end of most videos, I say keep stacking? It's a long-term play because this is eventually where it's going. We see around the globe right now, inflation going crazy, the cost of living going crazy. Some countries, hyperinflation. Even Argentina was one of those countries, and they elected a very unusual candidate over there who's anti-central bank also. So we're seeing some things happening around the world. Hyperinflation in many other countries. Look at what's happening in Lebanon. France has big problems. Of course, Zimbabwe, Venezuela. A lot of countries in severe financial strain because of this fake money aka fiat money system. So eventually, yes, hard assets are going to be where it's at, gold, and I think even a bigger role is going to be silver. All right, let's get into this article. Let's get into this article, his interview a little bit more here. He continues, the beauty of gold is that it's stable in value. It retains its value. That's one of the reasons why central banks hold gold. Gold has intrinsic value unlike the dollar or any other currency, let alone Bitcoin. Gold has value of its own. It's fungible in a product. It's a liquid product. You can buy and sell almost anywhere in the world. So it's really an outstanding commodity to base an exchange rate system on. Folks, what do you think these countries are doing? They're de-dollarizing. That's just the first step. First, they're trading amongst one another. Just the fact that these countries, these BRICS nations plus a lot more, are turning their back on the dollar, that's just the first step. But even 5 or 10 years ago, that in itself would have been unheard of, right? The United States would have looked at that as an act of war, going outside of the dollar, right? We had agreements globally that oil and trade must be conducted in U.S. dollars, the world reserve currency. And that reserve status is dwindling, and the dwindling is accelerating. And now we see the obvious is being acknowledged by the Dutch central bank. And the director of the central bank continues in this interview, quote, we have about 4% of our GDP in our gold reserves, and that's comparable to France, Germany, and Italy. So many other central banks, as you know, are re-implementing this or accumulating it, getting ready for what's going to be rolled out in the future. Folks, we all know where this is headed, so that's why we've got to keep stacking, but at the same time, we still have to figure out how to maintain and thrive and survive in the current system. So obviously, we don't want to go all in on precious metals. That would be crazy to do it that quickly, because it's going to be a slow conversion, but the conversion is accelerating. And it's been obvious for years. That's why we've been talking about this for years, and we're finally seeing some talk like this to maybe enlighten a few people and have more people realize what's actually happening. Now, the more people come to this realization and they see news like this and they hear what's being talked about from not just the Dutch central bank, but other central banks are going to start talking about this more and more. They're going to start talking the talk. They've already been walking the walk by accumulating, metals, especially gold. But now they're going to start talking the talk, and people are going to get word of this. More people are going to be going out and getting precious metals, and you're going to see the price skyrocket. I still expect $500 silver. I know I've been saying that for a while, but I told you there's no timeline. But I do see it within the next 5 years. And that's just my timeline. A lot of things could change. More road to kick the can down in this current fake money system, fiat money system. But that's my timeline. I try not to put timelines on things because so many things could change. They could come in. They could be manipulated. But this is where it's headed, folks. So what do you think about this? I think this is pretty huge news. Now let's go ahead and get into a chart right here. I'm going to make myself small so everyone can see this chart. And in the second quarter of this year, we broke the record back from 1965 with over 38,000 tons of gold being held at central banks around the world. Folks, look at this chart, and it bottomed out around the time of the financial crisis. If you look at the cursor there, I'm circling it, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Ever since then, though, it's been a pretty steep run-up in the amount of gold that these central banks have been accumulating. It's no coincidence that the central banks really started ramping up their holdings around the time of the financial crisis. That was basically the beginning of the end with all the money printing. Of course, inflation going wild since then, bubbles everywhere, housing bubbles, cost of living crisis basically throughout the globe. It's not just the U.S. People think that in the U.S. it's just a leadership issue, that we need to trade out one politician for another to fix the problem. Folks, that's not going to fix the problem. This is a systemic global issue of fake/fiat money, trillions of dollars created at the click of a mouse. I just like to remind people of that because it's true. There's no limit on the amount of money countries can issue right now, so therefore we have deficits that are exploding. We have debt that's exploding. You know the rest of the story. So interesting chart, wouldn't you say? We just broke a 1965 record, and it's going to continue because that's the direction we're headed in with the monetary system. But JJ, no, they're going to roll out a central bank digital currency. You're not wrong. You're right about that. They will roll that out. Is it going to work? Well, it's not going to work because it's going to be really, really bad. And that's what I've been warning people about for quite a long time now. At first, there's going to be some really bad Great Depression 2.0 times that I think we're going to have to go through before we get to the other side, where things are going to get so bad where there's going to be no choice but to go back to sound money and metals. How bad is it going to be and how long is it going to last? That is the question that I don't think anyone knows. But all these people out there, all these prepper channels saying prepare for the collapse. I can point a bunch of them here on YouTube. I can point to them saying they're saying move to the woods and prepare and get ready to live off the land because this thing is coming down. It's going to collapse. Social unrest, hungry mobs of people raiding and looting stores, trying to raid and loot your home. They're talking about self-defense. They're talking about security. For a reason, folks, this is real. This financial system and this economy is approaching the end of the road. I don't want to say the end of the road because, again, they can pave more road to kick the can down. But, folks, this is where it's headed. So once we get past this really bad period of digital currency, I want to think of a few other words that I'm allowed to say here. It's going to be a technocracy of a control grid, and you're going to lose out on a lot of freedoms. And people say, America's the land of the free. Yeah, right. We know that's a joke, right? All right, everybody, we're going to wrap this one up here. What do you think about this central bank accumulating metal and the Dutch central bank coming out and saying that they're preparing for a new gold standard? All right, this was just one of the headlines. Admits it's preparing for a new gold standard. Let's go around the web a little bit, though. All right, let's go back to June, actually, and let's see what mining.com has to say about it. Gold revaluation and the hidden motive behind central banks' gold buying, right? So this has been hinted for a while. And again, all we had to do is look at the accumulation and the amount of gold that these banks were accumulating. And it's pretty simple, common sense type of stuff to know where this is headed. So it's going to become more and more obvious as we go down this road of never-ending inflation, cost of living crisis, Great Depression 2.0 creeping in on us here. And will it be a big drop, or will it be just a slow motion descent into poverty, right, and debt? We'll have to see, but either way, we need to be ready for it. We need to be prepared. All right, we're going to wrap this one up, folks. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Come back to this channel because we're going to give you the most important news, tell you how to prepare. You want to keep stacking, and come back to this channel, please. And we'll talk to you very soon. Wrap this one up. Talk to you later. Bye now.